So this very unique case has been identified as filicide, which is a subclassification of murder where a parent or step-parent murders their own child. Now, what causes this particular condition? Well, we're going to try to find out more about it by connecting with a personal growth counselor, Maria Alyssia. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good morning. Happy
Hello.
Monday. Thank you for joining us. Unfortunately, on this Happy Monday, we have to discuss a bit of a somber topic.
Yes.
But first off, can you just start things off by letting us know what is filicide and what are some of the things that could trigger something like this to happen? Because us, as mentioned by Caroline, as parents, that could be the farthest thing from our mind. So it's quite difficult for us to try to wrap our heads around it.
Sure. Filicide, like you mentioned earlier, actually includes any murder of a child up to the age of 18 by either their parents or parental figures. And the most well-known case of filicide occurred in 2001 in the United States when a woman called Andrea Yates unfortunately drowned all 5 of her children.
Right.
However, filicide has actually been happening for much longer than that. So while it may not be a common occurrence, the recent cases that we have seen certainly is not the first time that filicide has happened.
Yeah. So I do remember that case, and I do believe in the United States, alone, we've come across similar stories like this, and unfortunately also right here in Indonesia. So Maria, in your opinion yourself, and because of your data, what does roles, gender, or maybe because of age, really made a huge impact on causing this issue or matter?
So gender roles can definitely play a part in a parent's mental health as a whole. However, rather than one parent experiencing more pressure than the other, it's more accurate to say that both parents are experiencing pressure, but for different reasons. Mothers, for example, are expected to take on the role of a caretaker,
Yeah.
and fathers might be expected to take on the role of a provider. But on top of that, there's just general societal expectations for parents that demand them to be nothing but happy for the birth of their children and to be absolutely perfect at parenting. When in reality, it's a huge transitional period for people, and it's perfectly normal to have mixed feelings and to have difficulties regarding this. So when they fail to, I guess, live up to these general or gendered expectations, parents can feel feelings of shame, guilt, even fear, because what if they, talk to other people about this and they're seen as someone who's incompetent to care for their child? So you can see how this can become such a big barrier for parents in accessing the support that they might need during these crucial times.
Yeah, and I do believe, especially with our firstborn, is when, it's like we practice everything. We made mistakes with our firstborn. Our second and third and, so on, we kind of already fully understand because we already went through with our firstborn.
Sure, and so on. So
Yes.
there could be more, perhaps 4 or 5, but yeah, I mean, absolutely agree. And, you did mention how gender plays a big role in a marriage and being a parent, where perhaps is there a way to, as a partner, for us to help alleviate some of the mental stress that can be experienced by our partner? And how do we do that? I mean, obviously, as you mentioned, our roles are different. So how are we able to take some of that load or some of that burden off of our partner's shoulders in order for us to kind of, burden them together and perhaps alleviate some of that stress?
Well, like you mentioned earlier, it's important to share the load just so that it is easier for you to be able to manage parenting your children. And part of that, and with all relationships, in fact, is actually communication. Because, remember that as a parent, you'll be a crucial role model in teaching life skills to your children, especially during the early years of their development.
Yeah.
So things like communicating, teaching them emotion regulation, showing them boundaries are all part of parenting. And this is something you can even model when you are with your spouse.
Yeah. And sometimes even spouses have disagreements, the good cop and bad cop, you might say, because we're brought up very differently from different families or even different culture. There's a book that I want to share with you, Paul and Maria. This is a book that I just recently read, The Book You Wish Your Parents Had Read, and Your Children Will Be Glad That You Did, by Philippa Perry. And I think this is one of the bestest books because I read this book, and it turns out there's a term in it called the inner child issue. So basically what we do to our children is what we remember are traumatized happenings that happen between us and our parents.
Sure.
And then because we remember it, and then we did it to our children. And, it makes,
a lot of times not realizing it.
Exactly. So not only because of spouses, but because of our own trauma before with our parents. So how do we engage with that, Maria? Especially where you want to break the change, what you had happened before with your parent, and you want to be better, becoming a better parent to your children.
If I can add to that too, sometimes we're even aware of it and we try to avoid it, but you don't realize, but you're actually doing it.
Yes.
While the whole time consciously you're trying to avoid doing it, right? Yeah.
So, you mentioned it quite perfectly actually. The inner child is not a recent phenomenon, and it's one of the many approaches or frameworks that we use within therapy. And there are even practitioners who specialize in it as well. And the inner child is that little kid inside of us that might carry around childhood wounds that weigh us down and hold us back from our full potential. It's the foundation of our relationships with other people and the place from which we make automatic decisions about things like love, trust, and safety. So it's the mark of our experiences from growing up with our parents. And as a result, when it's our turn to become a parent, those past parenting skills and experiences will come out in our interactions with our children as well. So there is an inner child in all of us right now that we can send unconditional compassion, nurturing, and love to daily. And we do this by acknowledging and reparenting our inner child. Now, reparenting can be quite complex work just because of how different people have different forms of inner childs. So it's best done in the safety of a counseling space. And you can certainly visit, psychologists or even psychiatrists for professional help where you can further explore your inner child.
Yeah, I was told by a psychologist that one of the ways to break this chain that you mentioned is actually by not putting ourselves in position or referring to titles that we used to. For example, you have siblings, right? I have siblings the same. So I was the youngest in my family. And to always still refer to my big sister or my brother as the elders and I'm the little one, that has to stop first, because you're always going to live in the past if you keep on, because we're all adults now. We're actually all, have our own families and everything. So we should be referring to the now in order to break that chain instead of keep on referring to the past from little things like that. And we should all treat each other as equals instead of, oh, this is the little brother or this is the oldest and we have to listen to them. So I'm sure Caroline's felt the same way as well. When we were ready to start a family, you're never ready, right?
Yes.
Like, I mean, you think, like you said, you prepare all the things you want to prepare, but you never...
think you found the one, but it's more than the one, right?
Yeah, it's like jumping into a pool. Sometimes you just have to learn how to swim. So how does one know that or a couple know that they're mentally prepared and ready to handle the challenges of starting a family?
Well, first of all, I think I'll just highlight the legal age of marriage in Indonesia, which is 19 years old for both men and women with parental consent and 21 without parental consent. So there's your minimum benchmark legally. But besides of that, there is that long-standing belief that people who marry later in life tend to have more stable marriages. And there is a grain of truth in that, because people who marry early may be subject to additional responsibilities, such as, the difficulty of reaching educational goals maybe, or the need to put in added time to launch your career, because now you're having to prioritize a family on top of just your own needs. And you might even experience additional distress if that marriage is done under pressure from parents or due to things like unwanted pregnancy. But of course, it's very important to remember that our chronological age does not always reflect our emotional maturity. And ultimately, the best time to get married is when you are prepared. And it's different for everyone. So if you're unsure of when that is, I can't stress this enough, but
Yeah.
always seek from a second opinion, uh, from a counselor or a psychologist, because you don't have to wait until you're quote unquote sick or in dire need of help before you get
Right.
mental health,
True.
professional help. You can always just consult them and get like a fresh perspective from someone who is unbiased and also familiar with the psychological realm.
Good point.
It is definitely no shame for you to get help because you're very conscious to know that, when you're already in that mental state that you need, other helps rather than maybe your family or friends. You need an objective view. Hence, that said, you were saying how, age doesn't succumb to emotionally stability, especially for marriage. But what about parenthood? Because I was married in the later days. I think I was in the end of my 20s and also and I felt like if I was married maybe in my younger days, I would not be as emotionally stable. I'm not saying at that time I'm emotionally stable, but not as is, And,
Sure.
even marriage where, you put two heads to become one, you have to have your set mind and your goals to have one set of goal of mind together as a husband and wife, yet alone having children. Again, it's a big responsibilities, and you know that you want to give the best, and maybe you have some traumas back in your past, and all of that chaos, I think, become one. So how could parents be really ready, to know themselves that, okay, I'm ready to become a parent? What kind of, points that maybe you have some pointers that maybe we can checklist. Okay, if I'm doing this and this and this, I think I'm ready as a parent.
Emotionally.
From a parent's perspective, I think one of the best ways you can prepare for parenthood is to learn about the child development stages so you know how to approach parenting with your child. Also, just like I mentioned earlier, communicate with your partner, definitely. Set down some basic expectations and strategies on how you want to navigate certain difficulties that you might face with your children so that you can be on the same page, because the last thing you want is to be arguing in front of your children.
Yeah.
So you want to be able to support each other. And also, speaking of support, increase your social support network and look out for people that you can turn to for help, understanding, and advice.
Right.
You can also check out even the internet or local hospitals, clinics, or centers for materials and resources that can give you a guide on parenting. And finally, because parenting is not just a parent's job, it takes a village to raise a child. So the people around them, including us, we're all just as responsible in ensuring that children in our surroundings, in our community, have a safe and healthy environment to grow up in. So
Yeah.
we have to learn to recognize red flags, things like social isolation, extreme stress from the parents, even things as bad as domestic violence, because
Yeah.
these concerns with mental health very rarely appear without warning.
Right.
And often there's a series of calls for help that can be opportunities for us to step in.
Yeah.
So for everyone else, have empathy and compassion for parents and the people around you. Make it a habit to check in with others, to actively listen, and to offer our support whenever possible, because children are our future.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
they are the ones that we have to invest in the
True.
most.
Yeah, I completely agree. We have a rule in our house when there's an issue that has arisen and we're talking to our kid, we have a rule as to one has to back the other up. You don't have to agree with your spouse,
Yeah.
but you have to back them up. And then later, if there's a disagreement, you can discuss it when
Correct.
the child's not around. But
Yes.
on the front, we have to show basically a united stance together.
course.
As well as the point that you brought up about milestones. I couldn't agree with you more. And I went into my first kid flying blind. So I actually found this great site. It's called Baby Center. You can check it online. You enter your kid's
Yeah.
name and age. And they'll send you
Yeah.
emails on every milestone or every sign or signal
Yes.
you're supposed to look for, all the way. And she's 7 now, and I'm still getting emails about what are they supposed to be talking like,
Right.
how are they supposed to be behaving, and it actually teaches you, it gives you advice, tips, and tricks,
Yes.
and how to handle issues that they might come up. But regardless of any rules that you have in place in your home or any sort of guides you have to follow, tension and hardships are bound to happen sometimes. So what do we do, or how do we handle any kind of tension that happens within our family structure?
Well, there is many sources of tension that can happen within your family structure,
Yeah.
because it's not just limited to, conflicts, let's say, with your children, or uh, difficulties with parenting. It can be conflicts between you and your spouse. It can even be conflicts between you and your mother-in-law, or your own mother and your father-in-law, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So with each of this, again, I guess I sound like a broken record in saying this, but it's true that one of the grounds of a good relationship is having a good communication. And while that
Yes.
sounds really easy to do, it's actually quite complicated, because there's many things that can complicate the way we communicate with someone else. For example, like I mentioned again earlier, there's things such as boundaries and how we approach certain things, and we have to understand that people may have different approaches as well. So it's also about learning to negotiate these expectations and trying to find a middle ground that works best for everyone. And when we're able to master this, even if it's with the help of a counselor again, or a psychologist or a psychiatrist, then we can be really good role models for our children, so
Yeah.
that they can carry this forward and be able to practice this in the future, not just with their own children, but also in other aspects of their
Right.
life.
Yep.
Top
Couldn't
three,
agree more.
the three most important things in every relationship: communication, communication, communication.
Exactly,
Right?
it is.
Absolutely
And
agree
finding
with
common
you.
grounds together.
Indeed.
Anyways, Maria, Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us right here. It was
Yeah.
a very fruitful
So
discussion.
insightful.
Yes, it was. And we hope to see more of you, and having these parenting and also parenthood talks with you again soon right here at the C Morning Show.
Thank you, Maria.
Good morning. Thank
care.
you.
Thank you so much
Have
for
a great
having me.
week.